We go all the way back to Aristotle. He was fascinated by the universe, and he claimed that the universe had always existed. Now, the eternal theory of the universe persisted for a very long time in human history. In fact, it persisted for more than 2,500 years. But beginning in the 19th century, evidence that the universe is running down, especially personified in the second law of thermodynamics, indicated that the universe can't be eternal. Today's energy in the universe has a little bit of useless energy that cannot be used ever again, and the universe is always losing some of its useful energy. It's still sitting there, but it just can't be used. Since you're losing a finite amount through time, the universe can't be infinite in age, or it would have no energy at all, no usable energy in the universe. The real death knell of the theory came in the early 20th century. First of all, Einstein realized after he completed his general relativity theory, if general relativity was true, then there are certain things that must be true about the universe. One of those was that he concluded the universe must be either expanding or contracting. He didn't know which one it was at that point, but in theory, it had to be one or the other. Einstein, however, did not want to go where that was leading him. That would lead him to conclude the universe had a beginning, but he insisted on the eternal theory of the universe. So he created a force called the cosmological force, which balances gravity and allows the universe to persist forever. Now, over the years, that cosmological force has been measured and found to be 0 to the 14th decimal point. So eventually, it took him 40 years, eventually Einstein said it was the biggest mistake of his life. And again, recanted and said that there was no such cosmological force, which leads him then to the conclusion the universe must be either contracting or expanding. And it can't do that forever, so the universe had to have a beginning. The next decade, in the 1920s, Edward Hubble observed actual motion of galaxies and deduced that the universe was in fact expanding. So you combine the theoretical expansion of the universe with the observation of the universe being expanding, people concluded the universe is, or at least was, expanding. And it can't do that forever, so it must have had a beginning. This forced the rejection of the eternal theory for the universe. By 1948, another theory had been proposed, which is now called the Big Bang Theory. It was actually named that by people who are making fun of it, but the name stuck. And the idea here is that the universe started at some point in time, and at that point in time it was hot, very hot, near infinite temperature, and very dense, near infinite density, and that it expanded from that point forward. That is now the prevailing theory for the origin of the universe. But there is a problem with that theory. The theory explains what happened to the universe once it's already there, but it does not explain where that universe came from. And this is a problem, because if the universe contains all that is physically, then if it had a beginning before that beginning, there wouldn't be anything. But nothing cannot produce something. That which came before the beginning of the universe would be nothing. But nothing has no power. Nothing can't do anything, because it is nothing. So it can't produce anything. It can't generate the universe. So the Big Bang Theory purposely does not explain the origin of the universe and cannot. As a matter of fact, it's a little rougher than that for those who don't believe in the Creator, because the universe had a beginning. That's an event. And in our experience, events have causes. Thus, the universe, the origin of the universe as an event, must have had a cause. But what is the nature of this cause? If the universe has all of time in it, and that's the claim, then whatever the cause is must be independent of time, must be eternal. The universe also has all of space. So whatever the cause of the universe was, it must be independent of space. Independent of space means that it must be unlimited by space, must be everywhere in space, and not be limited by space, be everywhere outside of space, both immanent and transcendent. Also, the universe has all of matter. So whatever the cause of the universe was cannot be made of matter. It must be immaterial. And you can keep going with this, because what you get is you describing the one who created the universe according to the Bible, the one who is eternal, the one who is omnipotent, the one who has got all the power of the universe. That which brought the universe into being had to have more power than the universe had. And thus, it's all-powerful, it's immanent, transcendent, it's got all the attributes of God. The point here is the origin of the universe cannot be, has never been, successfully explained by theories of men, but it's always been explained adequately by the Bible. There is what we call the anthropic principle in the universe. Some people describe it as fine-tuning of the universe. A very special place this universe is. These are observations in the universe that seem to suggest, now emphasis on seem, they seem to suggest that the universe was created for humans. If the universe had been a little bit different, humans couldn't be here. For example, the universe is dominantly 3 dimensions, not 4 or 2 or 1 or 6. There might be more dimensions than that, but the dominant dimensions are 3. And it turns out that if you posit a universe with other dimensions, 2 or 1 or more than 3, you do not have sufficient complexity in the small dimensional universes to allow for life. In the higher dimensional universes, you have no stable planetary systems and you have no stable atoms. So, as far as we can tell, the only dimensionality that actually sustains life in this universe is 3-dimensionality. But the universe could have been another dimension. It's curious that it's 3. And then it's got a topology of plus, 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 negative. In those 3 dimensions, you can move back and forth in any one of the dimensions of space. But in time, you can only move forward. You cannot move back in time. That's the plus, 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 minus topology of space. Turns out that if you have any other configuration than plus, 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 minus, the universe again does not allow for stable planetary orbits and stable atoms. So life isn't possible. And it keeps going like that. The law of gravity, the law of electromagnetism. They have to be there or life wouldn't be possible. In fact, not only should such laws be there, but they have to have the particular mathematical structure that they have. Not only that, but if the strength of the electromagnetic force was 1% greater or 1% less, atoms wouldn't be possible. Either way, life wouldn't be possible. And so it goes. The Earth's at just the right distance away from the sun. The sun is just the right kind of sun. It's an unusual sun, probably not actually a star at all. It is a specially designed star-like object that is designed to be stable enough to have an Earth with life around it. And so it goes. We got a special tilt of the Earth's magnetic field. Dozens and dozens of characteristics of the universe that seem to suggest the universe was created for human. The idea was formalized and given a name of anthropic principle back in the 1940s. Again, the ideas have been around for a long time, but finally formalized at this point. It's interesting that the hypothesis, the principle, was observed by unbelievers, by those who did not believe that God created the universe for man. So this is kind of an irritation to them. It's a curiosity to them that the universe should look like it was created for humans. Now, their answer to this is not really an answer, but it's, some people consider it a satisfactory address of the question, is, well, of course the universe is just right for us, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here. If we weren't here, we wouldn't observe it. And so clearly, if we're here, then it's got to be that the universe looks like it's made so we're here. And I think some people take that and go, oh, okay, I guess that doesn't. But still, really? Dozens, scores of very special characteristics of the universe that if they were just a little bit different, we wouldn't be here. It still sounds a little fishy, doesn't it? Still sounds, well, impossible. Of all the billions and millions of universes that could possibly be, this is the only one that could have had life in it. But that's not the only problem. There are some anthropic principle characteristics which are not necessary for life, that they don't have to be the way they are, and it still looks like things have been made for humans. These are even more interesting philosophically. For example, mathematics. Mathematics works. Why? What is math? Math was made by human beings. It's a language. We didn't discover mathematics. There are no numbers out there. There's no equal signs and multiplication signs and things like that out there. We made it up. The Greeks loved this concept. They loved the idea of the eternal, the perfect, the unchanging. And so mathematics was an imaginary world, a world where lines were straight, where corners were corners exactly 90 degrees, where this is not reality. Mathematics is not reality. There's nothing perfect in this world as perfect as mathematics is. But the universe is so close to that. Mathematics has actually worked in understanding the universe. Why in the world should that be? Why should something created by the mind of a human being on a scrawny little planet around a scrawny little star in a solar system among hundreds of billions of solar systems, how could it be that humans could create an imaginary world which happens to correspond to the universe? That's a little weird. It's useful because we can understand the universe because of this language we created. Also, the universe is knowable. Ever think about this? Science. Science actually works. How is it that we can understand the universe? Why is the universe simple enough for us, puny little humans, to understand it? Why? Einstein is said to have said, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is its comprehensibility. Why should we be able to understand it? We can even see outside of our galaxy. If you put this Earth around a random star, there's roughly 100 billion stars in each galaxy and roughly, by our estimate, 100 billion galaxies. So among those 100 billion stars, just randomly put an Earth on one of them. the probability is more than 99% that you're going to be in the middle of a bunch of stars so close together, like towards the center of the galaxy, that all you're going to see out there in the sky are all those stars. But we're not in that position. We're not in the center of our galaxy. We're way out, 2/3 of the way out of the center of the galaxy, in a rarefied portion of the galaxy, where because the stars are so far apart, we can not only see the stars of our own galaxy, but we can see other galaxies. The Milky Way, that beautiful Milky Way, is when we're looking straight into the middle of our galaxy. We can't see anything on the other side of the galaxy. We could have been in the middle there, and we wouldn't have been able to see Andromeda. We wouldn't be able to see any other galaxy other than our own. We would have no clue what the rest of the universe looks like. And it's not necessary for our survival that we be out here, but it sure is nice because we can understand the universe. The anthropic principle suggests that the universe wasn't just created for humans, for their survival, but so that we could know Him. The universe was created to glorify God. And that explains the data of the anthropic principle when no human theory has ever been able to. It's fascinating, the beauty of this universe. It is spectacular. It is awesome. It's huge. It's everywhere. And yet we don't talk about it at all in science. In biology, biological beauty is amazing. And in all of my training in biology, never once did I ever have a class where they explain where the beauty of biology came from. Now, I did have some classes where they struggled with the existence of beauty, and those were my evolution classes. Darwin struggled with biological beauty, and the classic example is the peacock's feathers. Why is it that the peacock's feathers are so beautiful? Have you ever watched a peacock try to take off? You kind of run awkwardly until they get enough momentum and then they flap. And I mean, if I was looking for peacock burgers and I was a fox or something like this, I'd love the peacock because it's got that extra like 3-foot long tail that you can grab onto. If you're not quite fast enough to get him at the body, you can grab the tail and you can catch him and eat him. Why is it that the peacock has survived with that beauty? See, there's a risk when you put beauty into your system. You have to put energy into it, and you lose some survivability. You put your survivability at risk. The prettier you are, the more time you take staying pretty. And you spend less time making a living or eating well, this sort of thing, okay? It works that way in biology. Organisms that put their energy into biological beauty take their energy away from survival skills. And it's not just beauty, by the way, it's also appreciation of beauty. This is another question. We can appreciate beauty. Why? What survival value is appreciation of beauty? You long walk up to the ridge, and then you see the spectacular sunset, and whoa. People in the middle of that, they're in what I call an awe experience. You realize an organism that appreciates beauty, that's not a good survival skill. While you're smelling the rose, something is eating you. Okay, this is not a good survival skill. What's the value of appreciating beauty for survival? And this is the problem with evolution. Because according to Darwin's theory of evolution, which modified is what is currently believed about biological evolution, then everything in biology is explained by having been brought into being by mutation and being preserved through time by natural selection. But natural selection is a process that chooses the more survivable character. The character that induces the greatest survivability to the bearer of that character. So if you have two peacocks, one that's putting its energy into beautiful tail feathers, and the other that's putting its energy into being strong and flying fast, natural selection is going to choose the faster one, the uglier one, okay? It's not going to choose the prettier one. This was the problem that Darwin had. He looked at the beauty of the peacock and said, why is it beautiful? And he proposed a solution. It's because the peahens choose the pretty guys. Okay, the pretty peacocks are chosen by the peahens. So that explains why the peacocks are pretty. But that only pushes the question back one step. The question is, why in the world does the peahen choose the prettier guy? After all, if you have two peahens, and one peahen chooses the strong guys, the ones that can fly faster, the kids are going to fly faster, and they're going to survive better than the peahen who chooses the pretty guy. So it turns out that natural selection takes out beauty. That's what it comes down to. We've played with this. Scientists have argued about this and literally I spent probably 60 class hours in evolutionary studies dealing with this question of how do we explain beauty? Because natural selection takes it out. It's an enemy of it. It's taking it out every single day. The world is less beautiful than it was yesterday because of natural selection. So where did it come from in the first place? How did it get preserved? And it isn't just that there's beauty out there, it's everywhere. And it's deep and it's magnificent. How in the world do you explain it? Beauty is unexplainable in biological evolution. The truth is that the God of beauty created a universe reflective of his beauty. God of glory filled the universe with beauty, magnificent beauty, awe-inspiring beauty, blow your sandals off kind of beauty. That explains the great beauty of the universe, and no theory of evolution has ever been able to address the beauty of the creation. And then there's the beauty of the appreciation. Why do humans appreciate beauty? Again, natural selection should take us out if we appreciate beauty. But God put that appreciation of beauty into us so that we would see that beauty and see his beauty through it. Aristotle struggled with this issue. Again, it's been an issue for thousands of years. Where does life come from? Where does each individual organism come from? Because it's amazing, isn't it? Isn't it amazing that some maggot develops into an amazingly complex fly, and the next maggot goes into an amazingly complex fly, and a really ugly, human being while in the womb grows up into this amazingly complex, beautiful human being as an adult. Every time. How does that work? He struggled with this. How does something that looks kind of like good grow into something beautiful? How does a caterpillar change into a butterfly? How does this work? And it happen every single time, generation after generation after generation. Where does life come from? Where does each individual life come from? Aristotle suggested that simple things, the maggots, actually came from non-living things, and that happens all the time. See, that gets rid of the problem. You just say, it's not that complicated. It's really simple. Simple things just simply come from non-living things all the time. The truth is that God created life. God creates life. God is life. He's the source of life. There is no source of life aside from him. That's what the Bible's been telling us. Well, spontaneous generation theory, that's Aristotle's theory, that simple organisms come from non-living things, held sway for 2,000 years. But beginning in the 17th century and for 200 years thereafter, scientists gradually set that theory aside, realizing that organism after organism actually came from another organism. That maggots actually came from flies laying eggs that grew up into maggots, that grew up into flies. That rats actually came from other rats, and so on and so forth. That life actually comes from life. But if you are an evolutionist believing that there was once a time when there was no life, then where did the first life come from? If the chicken comes from the egg, which comes from the chicken, which comes from the egg, which comes from the chicken, which comes from the egg, which comes from... Where'd the first one come from? And if it came from a non-chicken, which was another living thing, and so on, where did it all come from? If it all comes from a bacterium, where did the first bacterium come from? Where did the first life come from? In the 1920s, it was suggested that it must be that life comes from non-life. This is Aristotle's idea of spontaneous generation. Evolution has to say it happened at least once, even though all of our evidence indicates that life only comes from life. So abiogenesis theory came about. Life arose from non-life, and this 1920s idea spawned an idea in an experimentalist's head. How about if we test this out? If in fact there was a time when life came from non-life, and that was easy, then we ought to be able to reproduce the conditions of the early Earth, and we should be able to spontaneously produce, or watch life spontaneously generate from it. This came up with the famous Urey-Miller experiments, and those were exciting. It's pretty cool. They put together their guess as to what the early atmosphere was like. It wasn't a very good guess, but later guesses would be a little bit closer, perhaps. And put a little energy into it, and it turns out we can use all sorts of different kinds of energy, and lo and behold, you get amino acids out of it. Cool. There's 20 amino acids that are used in biological organisms most commonly, and most of those amino acids can be generated in this fashion. That's very encouraging. It seems to, it suggests that maybe life did come in this manner. In fact, not only do you get amino acids, but the three most common amino acids in organisms are the three most common amino acids you get in these experiments. In fact, the most common amino acid in biological organisms is the most common amino acid that comes out of these experiments. And the second is the second, and the third is the third. That's cool. Not only that, but we've got meteorites coming in from space, and we've detected amino acids on those meteorites in those same ratios. And we see those ratios in interstellar clouds. Whoa, that sounds like pretty good evidence that in fact life came from non-life spontaneously, right? Well, there are some problems with those experiments. They never actually produce life. They produce what we call monomers, which are small organic molecules that are used to build the big organic molecules of which life is made. But they've never been able to produce life. In fact, they've never been able to produce the large molecules, only the small ones, only things like amino acids and that sort of thing. And in fact, the fact that the most common amino acids formed in these experiments are the most common ones in biology suggests to me that God made the most common amino acid the easiest one to make. And the second most common amino acid in organisms was the second easiest amino acid to make. So actually it's an example of good design, not that life came from the non-living. These experiments have been done over and over and over again for decades and decades, and never have they produced life. They haven't produced, in fact, it goes better than that. Let's take an organism that already is alive and let it die. Now you got the whole complexity there. All you got to do is make it alive again. Nobody's been able to do that. Scientists haven't even been able to resuscitate a truly dead organism. Not only can they not produce an organism from non-living material, but they can't even resuscitate one. So what is life? In fact, it could be that life isn't a physical thing that you can produce in an experiment. Perhaps life is created by God and introduced by God. Self-awareness, consciousness, will. We see this in organisms. Not just humans. We've got it in humans. We've got humans that have will, but we have animals that have will. The cat or the dog that doesn't like that particular cat food or dog food prefers that dog food or human food. Okay, it's got a will, a choice. It isn't for survival purposes. In fact, they're often choosing things that are definitely not good for survival. There are organisms that have self-awareness. This is an interesting one, where the way they test for this is to set up a mirror, and they put a dot on the organism that they didn't detect. And so when the organism comes up and sees another organism in the mirror, if they don't realize it's them, they see a dot on another organism. But if they know that it's them in the mirror, then they know that that dot is on their head. And so an animal with self-awareness will reach up and touch the dot on their head by looking in the mirror. And that's how they test for an organism being aware of itself, him or herself. Self-awareness, interesting phenomenon. Where does that come from? How do you get self-awareness? How do you get will? How do you get consciousness? According to evolution, it's got to be by natural selection, choosing what comes about by mutation. But really, how does something physical create something non-physical? What is will? What is consciousness? What is self-awareness? Does anything physical have the ability to explain the origin of anything that's non-physical? I think not. Rather, Scripture tells us that a personal creator, a God with self-awareness, I am that I am, with consciousness, with will, created organisms with consciousness, will. He has sufficient power to do that because he has those things and he's all-powerful. In contrast, the physical seems to be an insufficient cause for these things. I would suggest that the creation account in the Bible, as simple as it is, and as old as it is, thousands of years old, has always provided the best explanation for a host of things, and I've only chosen 6. Using an analogy from war, I like war. When an army is moving into a particular territory, encountering another, they like to assume the high ground if possible. They like to get to the place where they can defend themselves most easily, most readily, attack the enemy most efficiently. They look for the high ground. There are people in this world that see the conflict between those who attack the Bible and those who defend it as a war. And they often most of those who are defending the Bible often feel as if they're in a defensive mode down in the valleys, that they're losing. And this has always been a surprise to me, because the creation is God's. It was created by the Word of God. It is held together by the Word of God. The Word of God tells the truth about the creation, and the Word of man does not. The creation is God's creation. It is not anyone else's creation. It's not a human creation. It's not Satan's creation. Satan is not the God of this world. God is the God of this universe. The high ground is the universe itself. It is those who oppose the position of the Bible that are actually in the trenches and trying to do the best they can to defend their position, when in fact the high ground is the universe. I would suggest this ancient document is truth, because it was authored by the God of truth, and it will always have a better answer than evolution.